Hello. I changed the camera angle. Hopefully this is enough to tip me off to, know that this is a new video and you all too. So, so as I was saying in the last video, these NPCs, they don't grieve and will be the first ones. They're very cruel. Their whole game plan, their whole thing is cruelty. Their whole thing is torture, terror, and traumatizing. The three T's: torture, terror, and traumatizing. That's all they care about. And that's all they care about doing to humans. So of course they're going to be the first ones to tell you, you should be over the death of whoever or whatever already. You shouldn't be grieving them anymore. You know, that is the problem right there. That is the problem right there. So, on to the next one. They also love to point fingers of blame. So it's like, well, wait a minute. All these videos about me pointing fingers of blame at the Vrill, these NPC, characters, and showing you how to pick them out. It's like, well, wait a minute. So just hold on a minute and let me say, because there's kind of a caveat, I don't know. So they love to point fingers of blame, but they will blame individual people, but never, never, never companies, like the whole company or the whole business. They will always blame individuals, individual people, but never companies, never governments, and never religions. Okay, they will never blame whole companies, whole governments, and whole religions. Guess why? Because they are the religion, the government, the company. They're not going to fight against their own. And the people that they blame are actual people. The people that they point fingers of blame at are actual human beings. They're not a reptile. They're not a brother of the serpent. They're not a non-player character. The ones that they're pointing fingers of blame at will always be a human being. It will never be one of their own. It will never, never, never. They will twist the story. They will convince everyone. They will do whatever it takes to make it look like this actual human being over here is the one to blame instead of the actual ones who are to blame, who are the non-player characters, the brothers of the serpent, the underground reptiles. Literally, literally. And if they have to sacrifice any of themselves at all, they will sacrifice a human, a brother of the serpent, rather than their own selves, a serpent, a Vrill themselves. Literally, literally. So, they love to point fingers of blame. They will blame individual people, but never companies, governments, and religions. Instead, they always, always, always blame individual people, even going so far as to make it look like it was one person's fault instead of, say, the entire corporation's fault. And that's the most insane thing that I've ever encountered is that they were way back not long ago in 90s, 2000s, they were blaming individual people for these massive wildfires that they were having in California. One individual person, when it's not an individual person's fault. It was the fact of climate change, everything was drying out. And man, have I got info about that too, but oh God. Anyway, so even going so far as to make it look like it was one person's fault instead of, say, the corporation's fault or the government's fault or the religion's fault, such as a church, etc. Literally, instead of blaming the pastor, they'll blame that one individual member in the church. And the pastor is supposed to be the head of the church. How is he not liable? How is he not, literally at fault for this? But somehow the pastor's magically, his hands are clean. Somehow magically, the church's hands are clean. Somehow magically, it's not the head of, all these people who are the head of the church. Somehow their hands are magically clean, quite literally magically. And yet it's this one little nobody's fault. It's that one little person's fault over there. Someone who's a lower actual human being in the church. Literally, the same thing with government. Oh, it's not the whole government's fault. It's not this whole wing of the government or this whole chunk or section of the government. It's this one individual person's fault. One person's fault, really. Well, we'll throw maybe 2 or 3 other people in with you, but, we don't like going to 4. we'll give you 2 more people. They will offer up 1 to 3 people, especially as of late. They will offer up 1 to 3 people. They won't go above 3 people now. Back in the day, they would offer up to 10 if they had to. But now they don't offer up hardly anyone, and it's always 1 to 2 people's fault. At most, they'll stretch it to 3. But they really don't want to stretch it to 3. They want to keep it at one person's fault, 2 people's faults. That's it. That's it. Whatever problem or anything is going on, it's on the head of 2 people. 2. Interesting. Very interesting. And in this next one, denial. Blaming it on individuals saves them from having to correct the system and to correct the overall problem. It stops them from having to stop the entire system, tear down the system, and put up a new one. They're lazy. They are prideful and pompous and lazy, and they don't want to do any of the work. And if they have to, they will get human beings to do the work for them. They will never do work themselves. That's another tip off. If you've run into a Vrill or a reptile or a non-player character or even a brother of the serpent, they will never do work themselves. They won't pay for work, and they believe in enslavement. They will never, never, never do work themselves. They will get someone else to do work for them. They will get someone else to do work for them. They will never, and a big thing in that is they will never do housework. Even if it's their house, even if it's their apartment, they will never do housework. They would rather drag a whore over and force her to clean than for them to even wipe off their own counters, than for them to even do their own laundry or dishes. And then they won't pay for it. They would rather drag someone over to their apartment, to their house, whatever, than do it themselves. And this is across the board. This isn't just men. This isn't just men. I've seen this with guys and girls, literally. They will never, never, if they are working at a job, they will be the laziest fucks around. They will not do any of the work. And it's not because they're ignorant or stupid, because there's plenty of stupid human beings, flat out ignorant human beings that just don't know, that you need to do this or you need to do it that way. No, I'm talking, they know better. They have experience, they have knowledge, and they will not do the work. Instead, they will get someone else to do the work for them. And if this is sounding like your boss or manager, guess what? Every last boss and every last manager is a non-player character. And I'm serious about that. You can laugh your ass off all you want, and it does sound hilarious, but every last boss, they don't promote humans. They promote their own. They promote their own. The only human that will be a boss or manager will be a brother of the serpent. That's as human as you're going to get. Everyone else will be a Vrill, an underground reptile, a non-player character. Everyone else. Everyone. They make sure that they have authority and that you do not. They make sure that they have all authority and you do not. And they will never do any kind of work. Never, never, never. So just to finish this point off, they love to point fingers of blame. They will blame an individual people, but never companies, never the whole company or even a section or a subsection of it. They will never blame whole companies, governments, or religions. Instead, they will always blame individual people, even going so far as to make it look like it was one person's fault instead of, say, the entire corporation's fault or the entire government's fault or the entire religion's fault, such as a church, etc. Instead of blaming that church down the road, it's just that one individual in the church. The whole thing literally makes me think of all these horrific genocides that have been perpetrated, by religions, by Christian religions, by Muslim religions, horrific genocides that are being perpetrated even by governments now. And they're sitting there wanting to say, oh, it's the leader of that government. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's that whole government. That whole government could have done what they had to try to stop that leader. Especially if it's supposed to be free, unquote, that government. Literally. And other governments could have said, no, we're not going to cave in. We're not going to give you, whatever you're asking for. We're not going to give it to you. Gotta go. Bye.